So who's the moderator of this panel?
Do we have a moderator or is eating something on the coffee break?
Or we just have a friendly discussion?
Okay, yes, I think it's a good idea.
If no one is against, they can start by just answering the question which is on the panel, like regulatory, is it good or bad? And then we just all start commenting, okay?
I think that regulation is very good, over-regulation is very bad. And unfortunately in Europe, in general, we're seeing a big move towards over-regulation.
Yeah, I would say that that depends from which side are you looking on this question, right? For example, I'm a representative of the business, right? So for business, regulation is very great. It is kind of out of the question, right? Because when you are regulated, you receive the trust from your clients, from potential clients. It's easier for you to build on top. It's easier for you to speak with the banks, with the tax office, with your lawyers, and so on, because they know that you already have completed some checks, right? And you complied with some requirements. You completed the security audit, financial audit, and whatsoever, right? So you already have the trust from the start, which then you build reputation on top. Because right now, for example, there is no difference for the customer between a shady exchange and a dodgy exchange, for example, and somebody who is really trying to do things in the proper way with verifications, controls, and whatsoever. And regulation will just change it. So even for consumer, this would be a big difference. This is a regulated exchange, for example, and this is unregulated exchange, and they will most likely think, okay, I will probably go to regulated.
I spent a few years in regulation lobby, and the point is always who regulate the regulators. So I don't think it's going to matter so much because countries compete as companies compete nowadays. They've always done that. The difference is that today is really, really easy to open your shop in another country, while 20 years ago was extremely expensive to move from London to Malta or to Singapore. So at the very end, our job is to find the proper jurisdiction and the proper regulation for the proper project. And we can make a lot of money on it, moving this project from one country to the other. So,
I think I echo some of Max's comments in the sense that it's always a question of how do you see regulation? Do you see regulation as an imposition? Do you see it as an obstacle? Or do you see it as empowering you to actually start operating, have a stamp of approval, and be able to have more credibility? And probably technologists tend to see regulation sometimes as a bit of an obstacle, but there's the flip side of it as well, which is that technology itself can be an enabler. So I am quite pro-regulation, but of course then, as Joe was mentioning earlier, the devil is always in the detail. And probably we are living in a historic period in time with the curve between over-regulation and under-regulation, where we're still living the after effects of the financial crisis, so we tend to over-regulate. Hopefully that we'll soon see the tipping point where the curve starts changing, but I'm not holding my breath.
Hi. You made a good point about regulation and the way it is viewed by technologists. I myself am a technologist. So no amount of regulation can save you from, for instance, vulnerabilities in the contracts which actually manage these ICOs. So I can give an example. For instance, the company Brave have a browser. They have this basic attention token, which is a token which users get by browsing, essentially looking at ads. Now, one of the problems the initial contract had, for instance, was that there was this opportunity for investors to actually get their money back if not enough coins were sold. And since the company itself had ownership of coins, technically they could have tried to sell some of these coins and then just get a refund themselves, basically lose all the investors' money. So my opinion is that regulation has to work hand in hand with technology. There needs to be regular auditing of smart contracts, ideally mechanized as well. That's where my expertise lies.
And actually, the interesting thing is today we're discussing the Maltese laws, and two of the laws, and unfortunately we don't mention so much those laws. We concentrate mostly on the VFA Act, which is about the ICOs and exchanges and all the other ancillary services to cryptocurrencies. But in reality, the Maltese law, unlike any other law you'll find in other jurisdictions that have been regulating the space, actually tackles that. So I was advising ICOs 2.5 years ago, and I remember they used to sort of self-regulate themselves by actually getting their smart contract audited or their technology audited voluntarily at the time. These new laws, particularly the ITAS bill, the Innovative Technology and Services Act, and the Malta Digital Innovation Act, which will be giving the accreditation and so on, are actually tackling that problem. That is the certification of the technology and the auditing of the smart contracts.
Can I add a point that when you speak about regulation, and we always speak about being fit and proper, and historically being fit and proper was always looking at whether you've committed any criminal activities in the past, whether you have sufficient knowledge to do what you're going to do. I think we need to move to a sense where regulation is also looking at fitness and properness of the technological arrangement. And that is where I think I agree completely with what Joe was saying, that the novelty of the Malta aspect is that there is the opportunity, and in some cases the obligation, to also assess the fitness and properness of the technology arrangement in place. And I think that is actually possibly a gate opener for other aspects of our business, that technology has become such a key element in this service. You can't simply look at the integrity of the individual, their qualifications, their work experience, but you need to be focusing much more on the technology. So whereas possibly historically the regulators' attention was 5% of technology, that percentage all the time needs to be increased to reflect today's world.
So regulation is good, but I have a question for the public, for the audience. Who knows Bernard Madoff? Who know who is Bernard Madoff? So Bernard Madoff is the creator of the bigger Ponzi scheme in the last 100 years, and he stole $64.8 billion. He was regulated and under the control of the SEC, that is the best regulator in the world, the most aggressive one. He was under control of the investor. He was under control of the journalists, that of course in the US are some of the best in the world, and I was under the control of the public. How much, and that's the question for the public, how much time it took to get Bernard Madoff? Nobody knows. 48 years. He set up his own investment fund in 1960, and they caught him in 2008. And the only reason why they caught him is because there was a gigantic financial crisis, and so people went bankrupt and had to liquidate their asset to pay the mortgage and not lose their real estate investment. Went to him and said, "Oh, I need my money back." He said, "Yeah, sorry, I don't have your money anymore because that's a Ponzi scheme." Surprise, 40. So again, I'm a former regulator. I believe regulation is good. I also believe business is better because we can move from country to country, and they say entrepreneurs vote with their feet. So if a country is not good anymore, we just move to another country. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not 30 years ago. And regulator is good, and Malta is doing a great job, and of course Switzerland, Isle of Man, Lithuania also attracting a lot of business. But regulation is not enough because the best regulator in the world didn't catch the greatest scammer in the world for 48 years.
Yeah, that's by the way interesting example. I never heard about that, to be fair. Yeah, but I would like to get a few steps back, right? When we say about that, of course, the companies and the businesses, the big ones in this space, right? If we're speaking about this space, they still all meet together on the different events and discuss the rules how to operate. So all the big names, right, like Binance, OKX, Coinbase, BitPay, whatsoever, right? All the big names, for example, they meet at least few times a year in consensus, and then in Hague, in Holland, like to speak with the legal enforcement authority, and so on. And so all these ground rules, they are still in this industry, although nobody really has a stamp on the website that it was regulated and checked and so on, but still all the big players, they still communicate with each other, with the legal enforcements, with the governments, to explain them what they do, how they do, and like not to do some stupid things like to be involved into money laundering and so on. The problem is that I still think that the main idea behind the regulation, except of the economic situation of the country which is willing to regulate, which kind of will earn money from the taxes from these companies, is mostly to secure the customer, right? To give customers some expectations that if you see the seal on the website, it means something, right? For example, if we're on Malta, we all know that the casinos is quite big here, right? And you know that if you have a stamp of MGA on the casino, then most likely casino is okay. I think this will eventually will appear also in the cryptocurrency space. I mean, let's say the big businesses right now are exchanges, right? All the rest are kind of or ecosystem or support for exchanges, right? And if you see all the businesses right now build like the tools to support exchanges and to earn the part of what they earn. So regulation, so the good regulation, right? And I think we have to speak about what is good regulation and what is bad regulation and why Malta. Because now there are rules which exchanges already do follow, like KYC, AML, and tiers and limits and controls and check of the incoming funds. Not many of you know, right, but there are intelligence that you can check the source of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, of Litecoin, whatsoever, which you receive on your exchange. And even although the customer completed KYC and everything, if he sends you Bitcoin, which were involved into, for example, some hacks from MTGOX or whatsoever, you should probably freeze these funds, although like, oh, this is the fluffy company and I receive Bitcoin from them. And you don't think that you should be asking questions, but you should. And all the things, the good regulation, I think, should be the ones who really work closely with the businesses and understand which regulation do they need to get them on board, right?
May I actually attempt to reply to your very matter comment? I think we're speaking a lot about whether technology needs regulation and whether this industry needs regulation and so on. I think we can also look at the flip side of it and confirm that regulators need to use technology much more themselves. So it's a two-way street. And most of the SEC processes are all human-based interventions, which are much more corrupted than code. So probably that is a perfect example why regulators need to use technology much more than they're doing, rather than an argument against regulation for technology.
I think the bottom line is that the blockchain can help the regulation. So it's not only the regulation on the blockchain can help the regulation. I was part of a security token offer in November, and it's a small investment fund, and you can see a smart contract in action, and it's amazing. I'm sure that in the next 2 years, a lot of hedge fund, investment fund, and real estate fund are moving to the blockchain. So I wake up every 3 months, and every 3 months, the smart contract read the wallet. If there is a profit, put 50% back into the fund increase, value of the token increase, everybody's happy, and the other 50% just pay whoever read all the wallets in the world, and whoever has a token of this investment fund got the money. So not possible to have a Ponzi scheme because everything is tracked on the blockchain. It's not possible to not be paid. I mean, Argentinian bond, or in Italy, Parma, scandal. Says, well, I want my money. Sorry, I'm not going to pay you because I have trouble. A smart contract cannot do that. I mean, even the CEO of the fund, if he decides to not pay you, he can't, because he has to convince 75% of the token to vote to buy him a Lamborghini and not pay the investor. That's not so easy. So we have a very small fund in Singapore, and it works. And yeah, the regulation is really tough in Singapore, but the moment that you don't go to jail, you do everything to not go to jail. That is a good, I mean, it's a good feature in an ICO project, not going to jail if you're a fund. And everything works. So I think the blockchain is going to help a lot the regulators in the next years. Of course, not all the regulators are going to understand them, but eventually they will.
I'd like to also say something a bit controversial. So I believe that Malta did a very, very huge step forward by actually enacting these bills, and I believe that all in all, the regulation is good. There are some areas, particularly in the VFX, that are verging on over-regulation, but I believe that in time these issues will be ironed out. But is the rest of the legal framework ready to accept actually this technology? And my fear is, you mentioned security tokens. Today, an equity token cannot be listed anywhere, for example. And it's not just a matter of having the exchanges, but actually also having other corporate law changes that need to be implemented in various countries in order to find a way of actually being able to list a security token.
I have to answer. The first one is politicians always come quite after technology, so it's going to take some time. And the second answer is decentralized exchange.
Fair enough. A decentralized exchange that is obviously able to cater for peer-to-peer transactions, but ultimately there are no big names of decentralized transactions as yet that have actually gone mainstream.
I agree, although as an investor, I think that maybe next year decentralized exchange they become bigger than some of the centralized exchange.
How are the changes in the equity of the company going to show on the company registry details?
Well,
that's also a problem in corporate law.
Yeah, I agree. But the company is a company. So if it's incorporated in Malta, you go to a company house. If it's incorporated in the States, you still, if there are changes in the shareholder, you see them. What probably you mean, and I completely agree with you, is that you have to enter into the idea that with security token you lose control of the shares.
My point is, for example, today, if I have a listed company, you'll see the stock exchange as the shareholder of the company. Obviously, it's not really the shareholder, but it's holding the shares on behalf of the shareholders. Once a company, its shares have been tokenized, how are you going to do that in the corporate?
I don't think you're ever going to tokenize the shares. It's maybe in 15 years, but at the moment what you're going to tokenize are the dividends. So I have two companies listed in exchange. I'm speaking about ICO, STO, and my 10 years as a business lawyer, I bring some hedge fund in the stock market. So first of all, as you know, really the shareholders on the stock market really doesn't matter. So the shareholders of Coca-Cola don't have a way to say. The main shareholder of Coca-Cola, Warren Buffett can probably influence Coca-Cola, but my grandmother not. So the second thing is that if you're speaking about security token offer and you move them to the exchange, you still have a company on the back. And if you set up this company in a good country, you have public access and free access to company's house. So who knows who's behind? So eventually what I would suggest to the investor is don't check only the white paper, how good it is, or the security token office and all the regulation of the token, how good it is, but check also where is the company based. Because, some major exchange just set up an headquarters in Uganda, so.
Leonard, I'd like your opinion on that point.
I think the centralized exchange solves some issues, doesn't solve much. So you have a regulatory glove right now, which is built around an existing model where you have typically a stock exchange which is also carrying out the CSD function and so on, and it's related. With the decentralized exchange, you are removing that. So you're having the order matching, which is still happening to a degree in a centralized manner, simply because you have to meet on a platform to be able to do it. But then settlement is happening peer-to-peer, which means that the regulatory glove we're used to wearing doesn't fit with the way the models are evolving. And I'm actually in favor of the way the models are evolving, because again, one of the problems of the financial crisis was having 10 intermediaries between my father in Malta and shares in Coca-Cola, and having multiple intermediaries in between. And you never know whether they're actually segregating, whether they're actually holding all trust, you're just relying on them. Blockchain could possibly allow us to have direct ownership and retain direct ownership even when you're participating in these kind of markets. So I would really love to see how the STO market exchange is going to develop. And I think it will actually tend to help a lot of problems which we've suffered from 10 years ago and which hit us quite hard as a result of the financial crisis.
But Leonard, do you agree with my point that it's not just these three bills, but also other laws that have to change to cater for this change?
Completely. These three bills do not exist in isolation. These three bills exist in a legal ecosystem, which once again is based in a non-blockchain environment. So everything is laws, unless you're the Romans and you manage to draft a perfect set of laws and regulations which can stand the test of time. Most laws and regulations are built within a historical context, and the historical context today is completely different to that. And this is fine because you are simply allowing the niche to grow, but then you need all the surrounding laws to allow the ecosystem to grow around it, not just the niche market on its own.
As a curiosity, who's a blockchain hardcore who believe in the trustless society, in the pure trustless society, so nothing has to be centralized? I knew him because from when I was talking before. So this is quite uncommon. I mean, I remember back in the first blockchain meeting in London was like revolution. Yeah, everything should be decentralized. Close the central bank, and you can see how things are changing. We just have one guy and 90% me, I would say. Yeah.
I think total decentralization risks on verging on anarchy. So I think people that have vested interest in today's financial system, and with that I'm not saying banks or necessarily traditional financial service providers, but each and every one of us who actually has makes his living out of business. I think we can't afford having anarchy because it will render us, it will make us lose whatever we have.
I mean, we're also far away technologically from concepts such as decentralized exchanges, which can actually interact with the real world, like the real financial system. So decentralized exchanges, some of the larger ones right now, they can only exchange ERC20 tokens. Now, in order to create a decentralized exchange which can interact with banks, banks wouldn't want to interact with a smart contract. They don't understand what a smart contract is. Now, so maybe an interesting law, which is a law which is coming soon, is that about legal personality. One which...
How do you own it, right? You own it only because you physically have it, right? For example, if you have an X or something. Then, probably a few centuries ago, the ownership became connected to your identity. So you have a name and the last name, and if you have a house, it is owned with your identity. Right now with crypto and with tokens and whatever, right? This is the first time in humanity, if you realize this, where information really giving us the ownership rights. Right? It didn't happen before as far as I know. So right now when we speak about the securities, right, when the token really represents some assets or rights or whatsoever, technologically it is kind of already here. But without the regulator really supporting this, you cannot really revoke or use this right of ownership, right? When we speak about, we do the tokens for real estate, right? So you can buy the part of this house, right? If you have a token, but then somebody who really owns the property will say, no, you don't, and then you go to the court, and then the court will have no layer, right, to support you, even though you are right and you have the information and you have the proof and the promises given and whatsoever. So I think to get this next step where information will really give us ownership and to really use the securities thingy, we need regulator to say, yes, you can do it, and to issue some kind of guidelines, right?
To be fair, security tokens in Europe are already regulated through MiFID. So there is no rocket science that basically if you want to launch a security token, you just have to follow the normal rules for IPOs and any other and then the other tools depending on how you're going to structure your security token that are regulated at EU level, basically. So in reality, I believe that once you launch a security token under a regulated environment, I don't think this issue can arise so easily. But obviously, if you just launch a security token without following any regulation, then obviously the risks are there, because in reality it is questionable whether that security, whether that offering was actually legal in the first place.
Okay, coffee break?
Lunch?
So I think we can wrap it up. Thank you very much, guys, for attention.